everybody, Mrs. Duncan here. I thought since it was National Storytelling Week I would read you Rashie Coat. It's a Scottish fairy tale, an old story. The fairy folk of Scotland were often called the wee folk or the other people and were thought to dress in green when they took human form. They could be very unkind to humans, but usually a fairy that had chosen to live in a house or castle was kind and helpful, like the one in the Scottish version of the story of Cinderella. There was once a king of a small kingdom, and this king was not very rich. Although he was poor, the king was cunning, and he thought of a way that he might have more money. He had one child, a bonny daughter, and he made up his mind that he would marry her to the richest man in his kingdom. One day he called his daughter to him and told her that she must marry the rich man. But his daughter did not like this man, for it was well known that the rich man was proud and also cruel to his servants, and he ill-treated the animals in his care. "I will not marry this man," the girl told her father, the king. "Why ever not?" demanded her father. Now, as well as being very pretty, the king's daughter was a good and sensible girl, and long ago she'd made up her mind that she would only marry for love and not for money. But she knew she couldn't say this to her father, as he would not understand, so she only repeated what she'd said. "I will not marry this man." "You will marry him," her father said sternly. "I am your father, and I am the king, and you must do as I say. I will call for you tomorrow, and you must give me a different answer." The girl knew that she would have to think of a reason to stop her father asking her to marry. She went down to the henwife who lived on the hill. "What can I do? I do not want to marry a man I do not love. What can I do?" "A bride to be may ask for 3 gifts from the man she is to marry," the henwife told her. "You must ask for a gift from this man. Ask for something that he cannot give you." The girl thought for 1 minute. "I'll ask for a golden gown," she said, "for no one can make a dress from gold." When her father, the king, called her the next day, the girl said to him, "If this man wishes to marry me, then he must give me a golden gown." "That's impossible," exclaimed the king. "How can anyone make a dress from gold?" "I do not know," replied the girl, "but that is what I want." The king went and spoke to the rich man and told him that his daughter wanted a gift of a golden gown. The rich man thought very hard about what he could do. He dearly wanted to marry the king's daughter, for he knew that a king's daughter is a princess, and if he married her, then he would become a prince and have people bow down before him. He called his wisest men and his best dressmakers, and together they found a way to make the cloth from gold, and they made a golden dress for the king's daughter. Many a girl would be pleased to have a dress made of gold, but not the king's daughter. She ran again to the henwife who lived on the hill and cried out, "What can I do? The rich man has given me a golden gown as I asked, but I do not want to marry a man I do not love. What can I do?" "You must ask for a second gift," said the henwife. "Ask for something that he cannot give you." Then the girl thought for 2 minutes. "I'll ask for shoon made from feathers of wild birds," she said, "for no one can gather enough feathers from the wild birds to make a pair of shoes." The girl went back to her father and told him she wanted a second gift of wild bird feather shoon. "That's impossible," exclaimed the king. "How can anyone make shoes from wild bird feathers?" "I do not know," replied the girl, "but that is what I want." The king went and spoke to the rich man and told him that his daughter wanted a pair of shoes made from feathers of wild birds. The rich man thought very hard about what he could do. He dearly wanted to marry the king's daughter, for he thought that as soon as they were married, he could have lots more servants to rule over and be cruel to. The rich man called his wisest men and his best shoemakers together. His wise men told him to scatter breadcrumbs around his courtyard, and when the wild birds flew down to eat, he would be able to catch them in nets. This he did, and the rich man had his servants pluck the feathers from the wild birds as they tried to escape. When the king's daughter heard the noise and the screeching of the trap birds, she came and lifted the corners of the net so the birds could escape, for she hated to see any wild creature being hurt. But the rich man had already enough feathers for his purpose, and as the birds flew away to the freedom in the deep woods, his shoemakers glued and shaped the feathers to make a pair of shoes for the king's daughter. Many a girl would be pleased to have such an unusual pair of shoes made from the feathers of wild birds, but not the king's daughter. She ran again to the hen wife who lived on the hill and cried out, "What can I do? The rich man has given me wild bird feather shoon, as I asked, but I do not want to marry a man I do not love. What can I do?" "You must ask for a third gift," said the hen wife. "Ask for something he cannot give you. But be warned," the hen wife added, "for this will be your third and last gift, and you can ask for no more. If he gives you this gift, then you will have to marry the rich man." This time the girl thought for 3 minutes. "I'll ask for a coat made from the rashes that grow by the river," she said. "And I'll tell him that this will be the coat I'll wear on our wedding day. Even if he is able to make a coat from rashes, this rich man is so proud that he will not want a bride who'd wear such a cheap coat to stand beside her husband on their wedding day." The girl went back to her father and told him she wanted a third gift of a Rashie coat. "That's impossible," exclaimed the king. "How can anyone make a coat from rushes?" "I do not know," replied the girl, "but that is what I want. And tell him I will wear it on my wedding day." "This is the third and last gift," her father said sternly. "If the rich man gives you this, you must marry him." The king went and spoke to the rich man and told him that his daughter wanted a coat made from rashes and that she intended to wear it as her bridal outfit. The rich man thought very hard about what he could do. He dearly wanted to marry the king's daughter, even though he saw that she had a mind of her own and it would not be easy to govern her. But he thought, as soon as they were married, he would get rid of the king and he would become king of the kingdom and rule over everyone, including his wife. So the rich man called his wisest men and his best weavers together. His wise men told him how to cut down the rushes when they were soft and pliant, and then his weavers made a special loom and they wove a Rashie coat for the king's daughter. You can see a picture of it here. Now, not very many girls would be pleased to have a coat made from green and brown rushes from the river, but the king's daughter thought it the most beautiful coat she'd ever seen. But she wept bitter tears as she put it on, for she did not want to wear it as a bridal outfit to be married to the rich man. Her father spoke to her. "We have wasted enough time. The wedding will take place tomorrow. The rich man has said you have to wear your gown of gold under your Rashie coat, and as soon as you're married, he will take you away the Rashie coat and burn it. Then everyone will see your golden gown, which is a proper dress to wear as his bride. As he will be your husband, you will have to do as he wishes." The king's daughter said nothing, but she thought to herself, "I will not marry a man I do not love." That night, she wrapped up her golden gown and her bird feather shoon and her Rashie coat, and she crept out of the palace. She ran away over the hill, past the house of the hen wife, through the deep woods and into the next kingdom. She had no money and she was very hungry, and so she went to one of the castles belonging to the king of that kingdom, and she knocked on the kitchen door and asked, Have you any work that I might do in exchange for something to eat and somewhere to rest my head at night?" The cook took pity on her, and he pointed to a huge pile of pots and pans. "There," he said, "you may scour and scrub those every day until they're shining bright, and among them is where you may rest your head at night." So the king's daughter scrubbed and scoured until the pots and pans shone brightly, and at night she laid down upon her golden gown, and with her bird feather shoon as a pillow and her Rashie coat as a blanket, she slept till morning. The days passed in this way until Sunday arrived, and everyone in the castle got ready to go to the kirk. "We're all going to church," the cook told the girl. "I've put oatmeal in the big cauldron on the fire to make porridge. You must stand behind the cauldron and watch it until we get back, and keep stirring the porridge to stop it from burning." Now the king's daughter was a good girl, and she wanted to go to the kirk on Sunday too. "How can I go to the church?" she wondered aloud. "If I do, then the porridge will burn and I'll be sent away from here." At that moment, a lady dressed in green appeared in the kitchen. The girl knew at once that this lady was one of the wee folk, and that she had chosen to stay in the castle. Then she must be a kind house fairy. "You can go to the kirk," said the house fairy, "and I'll still the porridge for you while you're at church." The king's daughter's clothes were stained with all the work she'd been doing in the kitchen, so she quickly slipped on her golden gown and she ran off happily to the kirk. Now the king of this second kingdom had a son, a young and handsome prince, who was also at the kirk that morning. As soon as the prince spied the first king's daughter coming into the church, his eyes opened wide. He was dazzled by the glow from her golden gown, but he was more dazzled by the rosy cheeks and pretty appearance of the girl's face. "Who is that bonny girl?" he asked his page boy and the lords and ladies who'd come with him to church. They shook their heads, but they didn't know. While the service ended, the prince looked round for the bonny girl, but she'd gone. She'd run back to the castle as fast as she could, so that when the cook came into the kitchen, she was standing behind the cauldron stirring the porridge as he told her to. All through the week, the girl worked at keeping the pots and pans clean, and at night she slept among them. She was happy enough doing this until the following Sunday, when she was asked to wait behind to stir the porridge while everyone else went to the kirk. "I'd rather be at the kirk," she said aloud. I do wish that someone else would mind the cauldron of porridge while I go to say my prayers." The good fairy of the house appeared once more. "I will stir the porridge," she said, "and stop it burning until you return." Now the weather was a little colder this week. As well as changing into her golden gown, the girl decided to put on her shoon made of wild bird feathers, and she ran off happily to the kirk. The prince was sitting in his place as the girl came into the church, and at once he saw the gleam of the golden gown. He also heard the rustle of the bird feather shoon. "What an unusual pair of shoes," he thought, as he spied the bird feather shoon. And what an unusual girl, too. He marvelled as he watched her say her prayers, for most of the other girls whispered and giggled with each other while they were in church. But although the prince hurried outside quickly after the service, by the time he did so, the bonny girl had gone. He resolved that next Sunday he would wait by the door, and that way he'd be able to stop the girl before she disappeared. When next Sunday arrived, the good fairy of the house appeared again in the kitchen to help the girl so that she could go to church. The girl put on her golden gown, she put on her bird feather shoon, and, as the weather was now even colder, she decided to put on her Rashie coat, and she ran off happily to the kirk. When the girl entered through the door, the heart of the king's son began to beat faster. "Why," he exclaimed, "even when she wears a cheap plain coat made from river rushes, I can still see her goodness and beauty. I do believe I've fallen in love with this bonny girl. I must speak to her today." As soon as the service was over, the girl left the church. The king's son leapt up and ran after her. "Wait!" he cried out. The girl looked over her shoulder, she saw a man chasing her with a page boy and some lords and ladies following him. The girl was afraid. They want to catch me and take me back to my father, she thought. So she began to hurry along the road. Come back, the prince shouted. Come back, girl with a Rashie coat. Please wait. I want to talk to you. But the girl started to run. She went faster and faster, so much so that she tripped and fell. But when she got up and ran on, as she disappeared round the bend, the prince stopped and looked down at the road. When the girl had tripped, one of her bird feather shoon had come off. The prince bent down and he lifted the shoe made from wild bird feathers and held it up. I will marry the girl known as Rashie Coat, he declared, and I will be able to find out who she is, for I will make every girl in the kingdom try on this shoe. The girl whose foot fits inside the shoe will be my wife. Now very, very many girls came and tried on the bird feather shoe, but not one of their feet fitted inside. They were either too big or too small. The prince was in despair, for he thought that every girl in his father's kingdom had tried on the shoe. He didn't know that the girl he sought was the one who stood behind the cauldrons of porridge and washed the pots and pans in the castle, and that she was too frightened to come out. But the hen wife, who lived on the hill, heard of the search taking place in the kingdom nearby and guessed what was happening. Ah, she thought, I know who the person is who owns a pair of shoon made from feathers of wild birds. The daughter of the king of this kingdom must be too frightened to come forward in case she's sent back here to marry the rich man. But I'd have a daughter I'd very much like for her to marry a king's son. So the hen wife took her own daughter to the next kingdom, and she presented her to try on the shoe made from the bird feathers. Now the foot of the hen wife's daughter was too big to fit into the bird feather shoe, but before the page boy who was holding the shoe could say anything, the hen wife snatched the shoe from his hand. Let me try, she said, and she pushed the toes of her daughter's foot into the top of the shoe. But her toes are too long, said the page boy. No more they are, said the hen wife. She stealthily took a pair of scissors from her pocket of her apron, and cruelly she clip it, the toes of her daughter. There, she said, my daughter's toes are a clip-it fit into the bird feather shoe. But her heel is too broad, said the page boy. No more it is, said the hen wife, and she pressed and pinched and squeezed until her daughter's heel was a nip-it fit in the back of the shoe. And so, by clip it and nip it by clip it, the hen wife made her daughter's foot fit in the bird feather shoe. Now the hen wife had also coloured and styled her daughter's hair to be the same as the first king's daughter, and she powdered and painted her face to make her have the same rosy cheeks as Rashie Coat. So the prince believed that this girl indeed was the one he'd seen on the kirk on Sunday. The prince said to the hen wife's daughter, Climb on the back of my horse and I'll take you to my father at his palace, for he should meet the girl I want to marry. So the daughter of the hen wife climbed up on the prince's horse and off they rode. The way they went took them by through the deep woods, and now the wild birds who fly everywhere had heard what was happening in the kingdom, and they remembered that it was the girl now known as Rashie Coat that had rescued them from the nets of the rich man. So when they saw the prince galloping through the deep woods with the hen wife's daughter on the back of his horse, they came down from the nests in the trees, and they flew about his head, and they chirruped, and they sang a song. Nip it fit and clip it fit, behind the king's sons rides, but bonny fit and pretty fit, behind the cauldron hides. The prince drew rein on his horse, and he asked the hen wife's daughter what this meant. The poor girl burst into tears and told him what her mother had done. At once the prince took the bird feather shoe from her foot and saw the horrible state of the girl's toes and heels. He turned his horse around and he set off back to the castle, and when he got there he went straight to the kitchen. There, behind the big porridge cauldron, he found Rashie Coat. The prince was happy to find his true love, and when Rashie Coat realised that the prince was a good man and that he loved her for herself, she fell in love with him too. And so they were married, so that the girl who decided she would marry for love did just that. On her wedding day, the king's daughter wore her bird feather shoon, her gowden gown, and on top of that, she wore her Rashie coat. And that's the end of the story.